Hello and welcome to our open world exploration tutorial video. We'll be showing you how to make an open world exploration game using Unity, but before we get on with the tutorials, we'll have a short discussion on what exactly open world exploration is as a genre, the types of games it has, and the recommended or required components of open world games. So as I've stated, contents of this presentation are as follows. What is an open world exploration as a genre? Examples of open world games and components of making an open world exploration game. So what exactly is an open world exploration game? Open world games are essentially games that allow the players to freely explore the entirety of the game's world seamlessly. More often than not, the players can get from one place to another without encountering a loading screen to load another level. In other words, all levels are in one big world connected to each other seamlessly. So you don't really encounter transition areas or um, needing to go from one level to another because you can basically just walk from one place to another as if you were in real life. So these games often provide non-linear gameplay and allows players to complete quests, interact with NPCs, find story pieces, listen to the storytelling, and other various elements of the game at their own pace and at their own will. So they aren't time locked, pressed, or forced to do anything and can just do everything at their own pace. So the key aspects of open world exploration games. So they have large open environments. The key thing about open worlds is that they are very big games. The maps that you can explore and traverse are normally very expansive, and they feature multiple biomes, even hidden areas like caves and canyons, and dynamic landscapes. Depending on the game, certain parts of the map may change, may be removed, may be added, so it really depends on the game. Player freedom, as I said, it's non-linear progression. Everybody can do whatever they want at their own pace. Some games do have things locked behind the level or the story. However, more often than not, you can enjoy most of what the game has to offer on your own time. So, the emergent gameplay, player-driven experiences, and other narratives that are important in shaping the story. The dynamic system, so the whole game is alive in one way or another. So the weather changes, the NPCs have their own behaviors and AI, and the procedural elements, like as I said a while ago, the changing landscape, the spawns of the enemies, maybe resources. They keep the world engaging as they change. Popular examples of open world games. These are some of them: Legend of Zelda, Breath of the Wild, Red Dead Redemption 2, Elder Scrolls 5, Skyrim, The Witcher 3, and No Man's Sky. So these are some of the examples. I've played probably most of the games that I've used as an example. No Man's Sky probably is the best example of an open world game. It's actually more than open world, it's open universe. You have an entire star system to explore, and each planet is procedurally generated. They have their own biomes, own caves, own fauna, flora. Same thing with the Elder Scrolls Skyrim, very famous RPG game where the whole map is already open to you. There are storylines and quest lines. However, you can do almost anything, any side quest, any bit of profession farming before you even tackle the main objective. A lot of you may also be familiar with Genshin Impact. That is also a open world game to a sense, as well as some of the older generation of gamers will probably know World of Warcraft, one of the most famous examples of open world games during that time. So the game lore and the world building, this is very important for a lot of games where a story takes place. These define the setting, the history, and the depth of the narration of the open world game. These are important for immersion and entices the player to be more invested in exploring and even just playing the game in general. So game lore and world building. The backstory is basically answers the questions of why are we here, what are we doing, for what reason do these things happen, etc., etc. So, for example, in Skyrim, you are there because of a war, and the dragons coming alive, and that is basically the reason why you do a lot of the things you do in the game. I'm doing my best not to do any spoilers, but that's the gist of it. The setting is open world environments such as forests, cities, deserts, or even space stations, like in No Man's Sky. As I mentioned, it is a space traveling game, so space stations do make sense. Narrative structure, linear versus emergent storytelling, and then environmental storytelling. So this is basically like what they do in Dark Souls and Elden Ring. They don't have a storyteller or an overarching text of story. They usually tell the story through ruins, notes, NPC dialogue. So you have to piece the story together yourself. But usually that makes for more engaging and immersive gameplay. So the most important thing of any game is the character controls. So responsive and smooth character controls enhances the player's immersion and usability. It dictates how players navigate and interact with the environment. This is very important because no player would want a game where the controls for the character don't make sense or they are horrible. Those are usually games that don't last very long and are usually rated negatively. So we'll have a tutorial on making the character controls later on. But first is the movement system. So for us, we're using a third-person view using the first-person controls of Unity's character controller. So if you aren't aware, there are games where instead of looking through first-person, meaning you're looking sort of like through the eyes of the character, you view the character slightly from afar in the back. So this allows the camera to free look and things like that. It allows for more spatial recognition and basically allows you to even see your own character for various reasons. People who have played World of Warcraft, Genshin Impact, they'll know exactly what I mean by this kind of third person control view. The animations, running, jumping, climbing, interacting, and the physics and collision. So this ensures the smooth movement and also obstacle detection, because it doesn't make sense if your character just faces through solid walls and rocks for no reason at all. Next, we have the level design. The level design shapes how players engage with the world and guiding them through meaningful exploration and interaction. So basically, what this means is that even though in open world games there is one big world, there is still products of intelligent design, so that instead of just one big flat empty world, there are things that the player has to do, encounter, points of interest, all that, which we will explain now. So in level design, there are two kinds. First of all, procedural versus handcrafted. Procedural levels are made as they go. So it's basically up to the system on how to handle the level generation. Sometimes it can be random, sometimes it can be set, but usually it's random and not one is the same. And handcrafted ones are basically ones that are already pre-made by players that the game simply has to load. So people who enjoy making maps, making dungeons, making overworlds, this is usually what they are classified as, handcrafted designs. Points of interest, as I mentioned a while ago, even though each world is open world, there are still things and locations that the player has to explore. So landmarks, dungeons, towns, secret areas, boss rooms, resource collection sites, etc., etc. Traversal mechanics, so in addition to just walking or running, players might also be able to climb up mountains, swim across rivers, and if there are vehicles, either glide or fly or drive through the world. And then the dynamic environments, as I mentioned in the beginning, certain games have dynamic environments, so weather effects, rain, snow, hail, a day-night cycle, and interactive objects. So maybe you could pick things up, cut things down, depending on what the game requires. And finally, we have the stamina system. This is important for action games, especially. So a stamina system limits certain actions like maybe blocking, dodging, sprinting. and things like that. It adds a bit of strategy and realism to movement and combat. We'll have a tutorial on the stamina system as well, but for now, we'll talk about this.
Alright, let's proceed with the stamina system. So what is a stamina system? The stamina system is a crucial gameplay mechanic in many open world games, adding strategy and realism to movement and combat. It prevents players from endlessly running, climbing, or dodging, forcing them to manage their resources wisely. So, how does stamina work? In most games, stamina is consumed when performing specific actions, and these can include sprinting. Sprinting, which allows players to move quickly across large environments but drains stamina over time. Climbing, where stamina determines how long a player can ascend walls, cliffs, or obstacles before falling. Dodging and evading enemy attacks, ensuring that stamina management is key in combat. Special abilities, or heavy attacks, which often require stamina to balance their power. And stamina regeneration. Stamina can regenerate in different ways depending on the game's design, including passive regeneration, where stamina slowly refills over time when not in use. And we also have item-based recovery, where players must consume food, potions, or rest at specific locations to regain stamina. We also have UI feedback and player experience. A well-designed stamina bar helps players keep track of their remaining stamina without distracting them. Some games also use sound cues, like heavy breathing or slowed movement, to indicate exhaustion. For example, in The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, Link's stamina determines how far he can climb or swim. If his stamina runs out while he's climbing, he falls. If it depletes while swimming, he drowns. This simple mechanic makes traversal more engaging, requiring players to think ahead. Obstacles and challenges. To make exploration more interesting, developers introduce obstacles and challenges that force players to adapt their approach. These obstacles can take many forms, from dangerous terrain to AI-controlled enemies. Some types of obstacles include terrain hazards. These are natural elements such as cliffs, rivers, lava pits, and swamps. These barriers require players to find alternate routes or use special abilities like swimming or gliding. AI enemies. Hostile creatures, bandits, or other characters that react to the player's actions. These encounters add excitement and danger to exploration. Environmental puzzles. Locked doors, hidden switches, and parkour challenges that require problem-solving skills to progress. Survival elements. Some open-world games introduce hunger, temperature management, and fatigue to make exploration more realistic. For example, in Red Dead Redemption 2, extreme weather affects stamina, requiring players to dress appropriately for the climate. By combining these elements, open-world games create a more immersive experience where players must think strategically to overcome challenges. The death mechanic. Death is an inevitable part of gaming, but how a game handles death can drastically change the player's experience. Some games treat death as minor inconvenience, while others make it a significant setback. Respawn systems. Games typically handle respawning in different ways. Checkpoint systems, where players restart from specific locations after dying. Campfire or safe zone respawning, often seen in survival games where players return to their last resting place. Permadeath, where dying means losing everything, adding a high-risk, high-reward element. The consequences of death. These can be losing items or currency, as seen in Dark Souls, where players must retrieve their lost souls. Resetting progress to the last save point, encouraging careful play. Temporary debuffs or stat reductions, making recovery more difficult. Some games like Hollow Knight and Dark Souls make death a learning experience by challenging players to improve their skills rather than just penalizing them. Let's proceed to the quest list. A quest system structures the player's objectives and guides their journey through the game's world. Well-designed quests keep players engaged and invested in the story. Some types of quests are main story quests. These drive the central narrative and progress the game's plot. Side quests, optional content that expands the world and rewards players with unique items or lore. Fetch quests, tasks where players must collect or deliver an item. These can be repetitive but may introduce interesting story elements. Bounty or hunting missions, tracking down enemies or creatures for a reward, often seen in RPGs and adventure games. Quest implementation. Quests can be given by NPCs discovered through environmental storytelling or triggered by player exploration. A good quest system balances structure and freedom, ensuring that players feel rewarded for their efforts. For example, in The Witcher 3 side quests are deep and meaningful, often affecting the main story based on the player choices. Now we proceed to game UI and cutscenes. User interface and cutscenes play a huge role in how players experience an open-world game. The game UI. A good UI provides necessary information without cluttering the screen. The key UI elements include health and stamina bars, inventory menus for weapons, armor, and items, minimap and compass for navigation, quest logs and dialogue options, cutscenes and storytelling. Cutscenes enhance immersion by presenting important story moments. There are different types of cutscenes. Real-time cutscenes, which let players move or interact while the scene plays out. Pre-rendered cinematics, which provide high-quality visuals but take control away from the player. Interactive cutscenes, where players make choices that affect the story. In God of War, seamless cutscenes transition smoothly into gameplay, making storytelling feel natural. And that's about it for this video. Thank you for watching this, and we hope that you learned something new. Good luck on your game development journey.
What's up, guys? It's me, Aldrich. I just want to say thank you so much for the support. Please leave a like, comment, and subscribe. And remember to seize the day. Thank you.